going to go ahead and get started. And first off, I want to thank all of you who are joining us for our 2020 virtual guest speaker program. For those who don't know me, my name is Mike Yaley. I'm the director at the Lair. Thank you, not only for joining us tonight, but so far this week for fourth week campers, Creekside and Disco Bingo have been really well attended, so thanks. Tonight, we just a couple of housekeeping items. We've got you all on mute, and we're asking that if you have questions, to please put those questions in the chat, and then Rich will either answer them as he goes along, or at the end, we will answer the questions. Also, we are recording, and you acknowledged in your sign up that we are recording. So if you don't want to be recorded, please turn your video off. But I think it's now time to get to the show, and I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, who is the Chief Innovation and Entrepreneurship Officer for UC Berkeley. His topic tonight is Shaping Berkeley Changemakers. Rich Lyons serves as the Chief Innovation and Entrepreneurship Officer for UC Berkeley, as I said. He served as the Dean of Berkeley's Haas School of Business from 2008 to 2018, and currently holds the William and Janet Cronk Chair in Innovative Leadership. From 2006 to 2008, he oversaw Goldman Sachs University as Chief Learning Officer. He received his BS with highest honors from UC Berkeley in business, and his PhD from MIT in economics. And before rejoining Berkeley, Rich was, for 6 years, was on the business faculty at Columbia University, and his research and teaching expertise is in international economics and finance, and his top applied interest is the how and why of setting strong institutional cultures. So without further ado, Rich Lyons. Take it away, Rich.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. And thanks to the whole Lair team, everybody on this call, and I see a lot of familiar faces and especially familiar names. We'd all wish we were up among the trees, as Kathy and Mike are, and some others, but we will get back there. We will get back there, all of us. Let me start. So the title of the talk, as Mike mentioned, is Shaping Berkeley Changemakers. And I'm going to start with a thought experiment. I would like you to think about a question. If we put you in control, and in control of a particular thing in our Berkeley, if somebody said you can teach a 30-hour course, 30 contact hours, what we call a 2-unit course, but 30 contact hours, on the front end of undergraduate's experience. So 30 contact hours, all freshmen, all incoming transfers. What would you teach? What would you choose to teach? And that's a very big question, and most of you aren't in professional roles where you have to think about a question like that all the time. And nobody has said that anybody has that option, but I want to start the thinking that way. So I see some people say time management. I like that answer because I'm trying to get better at that myself, but we do notice that we could all get better at that. But when I think about a question like that myself, right, it's part of it. How do you welcome people to Berkeley, right? There's a kind of what in business speak we call onboarding. Right? How do you onboard people to the culture? And of course, Golden Bear orientation, and Berkeley does a lot more of that than it used to. But if there were in fact a 30-hour course that did that, that would be interesting. So I guess with a question like that, part of the idea is, and I see a lot of good answers here that are coming up in the chat. What goals? What would our goals be? We might think about it that way. Now, I'm going to use business speak on you again, and you don't have to think about it this way. But, people generally think about a strategy or an institution that is effective as having a strategy that is true, that is valued, and that is different. And these are fundamental elements of what make a business doesn't have to be a business. It could be an institution, a nonprofit, whatever it is. So as we think about goals, you don't have to think about these goals through that lens. But let me start with this goal, different. Could we make this class identity making for Berkeley? And I mean sharply identity making. Now, Berkeley has a strong identity. Berkeley is known the world over. A very strong reputation. We all understand that. But Berkeley's identity could be even sharper. It could be understood even more purely. So I think there's an identity making goal. It would be a shame to have a 30-hour course that everybody goes through and not do some identity making work in that course. Now, most of our minds probably didn't go to identity making, but I think that is an important goal. And I'm going to call that sort of difference, creating difference. Here's a second one. I think we would want it to be unifying. We would want it to be including. We would want the whole university to feel invested in the course, right? If the engineers love it, but the humanists don't, or vice versa, right? That's not a university. That doesn't pull us together. It's not a unifier. Could we come up with something that the humanists and the social scientists, which I am, and the scientists, they all say, I like that. Let's lean into that together. Unifying, including. Okay? So that I'm going to call, sort of true. It's truth. It connects people. So that's sort of this true piece. Different, true. And then we would want it to be valued. And I think that's where most of our minds went immediately, right? Most of you are not thinking about, I want the humanists to be on the same page as the scientists. That's kind of not the problem you would naturally solve when I first posed the question. But within the university, that becomes an important thing if it's really going to be owned, embraced by everyone. This third element, I think, is where most of our minds do go. We want it to be valued. True, valued, different. What does valued mean? Well, different people have a different answer to that. We would want it to communicate a people vision. What kinds of people do we want to attract to Berkeley? Do we want to shape at Berkeley? Do we want to put out into the world? I mean, most of us would say we want them leaving convinced that they have the right stuff to leave this world better than they found it. And guess what? They do. And we can make them even better at that. And there are a number of things that I see here. Collaboration skills, communication skills, lots of things that have been mentioned here. So what is the people vision? You could say, well, I want them to learn data science. That would be a fine answer. I think if we sort of thought a little bit about what's going to leave them with a sense of agency, with a sense that their life is going to have traction on the world. Young folks today, they're filled with a sense of purpose. They want their life to have meaning and purpose. All human beings do, but young people especially do. But not all of them sort of feel as though they have the toolkit that they need to deliver on that. Okay, so these three things, can it unify us? Can it help to sharpen the identity of this institution? Can it communicate a people vision? Well, we would say those are the people that the future is going to need even more of. All right, so now back to the title. Shaping Berkeley Changemakers. I'm going to do another thought experiment with you. I'm going to mention 5 things. I'm not going to comment. This is recorded. It's a recorded session. I'm just going to mention 5 things in a harmless way. But I want you to think about them. I call it the lineup test. Does one of those 5 things leap off the page? Jump out? Would you pull it out of a lineup? Would somebody who's not a Berkeley alum pull it out of this lineup? Here we go. 5 things. Number 1, Harvard Changemaker. Number 2, Princeton Changemaker. Number 3, MIT Changemaker. Number 4, Stanford Changemaker. Number 5, Berkeley Changemaker. Now, if you respond to that list the way I do, and the way I've tested that list with other people, Berkeley leaps off the page. That is an august group of institutions. I mean, a remarkable group of research universities. Best in the world. To leap off that page is saying something. Now, I am the Chief Innovation and Entrepreneurship Officer, okay? That's my role, and it's a campus-wide role. Just to give you more of this thought experiment. If Carol Christ, if our chancellor came out tomorrow and said, going forward, this whole university is going to be about entrepreneurship, dead on arrival. Couldn't work for a lot of reasons. Our faculty would rightly say, show me the research in entrepreneurship. You're going to wrap this remarkable research university around a field that has research this deep. No, you're not. And they'd be right to say that. Others would say, really? We're going to take this outstanding, incomparable public institution and make it more commercial? Not everybody would react that way, but some would. All right. So this notion of Berkeley Changemaker, the word Changemaker is out there. That's not new. But when you put the word Berkeley in front of it, and we are trademarking that phrase, the idea is there's something there. There's something that strikes right here for people. Right? It's in the history of the place. It's in the DNA of the place. Most importantly, if this vision, this picture that we're painting here, is founded on anything, I wouldn't say it's founded on the history of Berkeley in the 60s necessarily. What I would say is it's founded on our values. It's founded on the values that have been separating Berkeley for generations. Values like question the status quo. If that's not Berkeley, I don't know what is. Now, you might look at that and say, yeah, but that's kind of an unobjectionable phrase. Anybody could say that. Oh, the president of Harvard University comes out tomorrow and says, Harvard University, question the status quo. Doesn't work. That's not where that great institution comes from. It's not what they stand for. Question the status quo, Berkeley Changemaker, hand in glove. Here's another. We sometimes use the phrase beyond yourself. Lots of different ways to say this. A sense of stewardship for something larger. Wears the big hat. Officers eat last. Whatever sort of phrase, servant leadership. Not everybody lives that way. I mean, I used to say to the students back when I was dean of the business school, have you ever worked for somebody who made a decision that was in his or her best interest, that wasn't in the best interest of the team or of the company? Did you notice? Did anybody not notice? Stuff happens all the time. Now, that doesn't mean there's only one way to lead and one way to manage. They're all different kinds of people. It would be ridiculous to say, if you're not beyond yourself, you can't be a good leader. I mean, that's just not the world we live in. But that is in the DNA of this remarkable public institution that, speaking frankly, competes for talent with those absolutely remarkable private institutions that were on that list that I mentioned earlier. So, when we talk about values like beyond yourself, and we talk about values like question the status quo and others, that's part of what makes this picture separating and makes it valuable. All right. Now, all of that is basically by way of introduction. But I do want you to think about that phrase as being especially interesting in this way. Part of why it interests me so much is that, if Berkeley can really deliver on a narrative called the Berkeley Changemaker in a very fundamental way, that effectively nests things like entrepreneurship, right? I mean, if you're getting that done, you're getting a lot of other things. We wouldn't want a narrative called the Berkeley Changemaker in our curriculum and beyond. I'll talk more about what this looks like on the ground. But we wouldn't want that if it didn't include an entrepreneur. We've got a 20-year-old woman in engineering that wants to be an entrepreneur in a traditional way, going into tech, whatever. For that person to say, "Oh, that whole Berkeley Changemaker thing, that's not me." No. It's got to encompass that. It's got to nest that. Now, what does this look like? You might say, "Okay, God, you're at 10,000 feet. Will you please give me something more concrete, please?" Okay. So I'm going to start with a course that was taught at the business school, open to all undergraduates, developed and taught by a professor by the name of Alex Budak. And the course was called Becoming a Changemaker. So in 2019, there were roughly 50 people in Alex's class, 17 different majors, so it was across all undergraduate majors. The mean course rating for this class was 6.7 out of 7. The mean. Occasionally, a faculty member gets an average or a mean instructor rating of 6.7 out of 7. That's very rare. But for a course to be up there, almost unheard of. I'm going to read to you what it's admittedly cherry-picked, okay? But I'm going to read to you what one of those undergraduates wrote for this class. Now, it was 50 people, so it wasn't 5,000 people. When you're talking about all the incoming freshmen and transfers, you're talking 6, 7, 8,000 people each year. So it's a different scale, but still. Here's what one of those undergraduates wrote. This was in the teaching evaluations, one of the written comments. Everyone at Cal should be required to take this course. Again, the course title was Becoming a Changemaker. Everyone at Cal should be required to take this course. It gives an optimistic and change-making perspective to any discipline. It has genuinely changed my outlook on the world and how I want to go through life. Even if you think you are already a good leader, this class will teach you so much about being not just a leader, but a change maker wherever you go in life. All right. So, can we teach this Berkeley Changemaker thing? Many of you know Bob Jacobson, our Dean for Undergraduate Studies, physics faculty member, friend and colleague. And I remember we were talking to him about what might the instantiation of this Changemaker, Berkeley Changemaker concept in the curriculum in a wider way look like. And one of the points that he made was, there are things that we've wanted to teach for a long time that we've in fact tried to teach, like curiosity. Why don't you give everybody a class when they come in on curiosity? It would be great if we could deliver that. Not just, but actually deliver curiosity. We've tried. It's very hard. So part of the question here is, all right, I'm kind of liking this Berkeley Changemaker thing. It feels differentiating, identity making. You can use whatever jargon you want. It feels like it's got a people vision, that, young people that are leaving Berkeley with a sense of agency. A true sense that they can have traction on the world. That's got to be a good thing. And if it's unifying, if the humanists are saying, I'm in, and the social scientists are saying, I'm in, and the scientists are saying, I'm in, which they have been saying on the faculty side and the staff side, it's got a lot of those nice features, but it's still a shiny object. You got to show me that you can deliver this. So Alex's course was delivered a couple years in 2019. It was taught again this last spring. But what we've done is we've designed, together with the campus, a course this summer. And it is a 100% online course. So Alex's course, the one that did so well at the business school, was not an online course. We have invested a lot of energy, and when you design a course, it's one thing to have a traditional course that has to go online or be taught remote, because it's the only way we can do it in a COVID world. It's actually quite a different thing to say, no, we're going to design this course soup to nuts to be delivered digitally. It's in fact a different course when you do the latter. And it's generally a better course because you make different decisions. You design the course differently and so forth. So this course was put together. It's called The Berkeley Changemaker. And it's connected to, for those of you that follow the curriculum, there's a discovery experiences, Berkeley Discover. We are connecting it to a lot of those sort of hands-on experiential opportunities that undergraduates have these days at Berkeley, even more than we had, those of you that went to Berkeley when we were there. In any event, it's called the Berkeley Changemaker. Now, it's being taught this summer. We were shooting for 5x. So remember the class, call it a pilot. Alex's prior class was I'll call it the pilot, had 50 students in it. We wanted to get 5x. We wanted to see whether we could get 250 students in it. It looks like we will have 400 to 500. The class starts in about 4 weeks. It's a 3-week class, so it's at the end of the summer. We've already got nearly 400. We will land between 400 and 500. Could it be, we think we could have 1,000 next summer. And of course, this doesn't have to be taught just in the summer. It can be taught in the fall and the spring. So if you sort of said, all right, with the summer, suppose next summer you've got 1,000 people taking it. This is the first offering. It's the first time this class has been offered through Letters and Science to the whole community coming in. 400 to 500 will sign up. It's possible that we'll get 1,000 in the summer class the following summer because it will be known, and we've put a lot into making it good. Guess who videotaped content for this class? Carol Christ. Guess who else? Janet Yellen. Guess who else? A whole list of people you would know. I mentioned Bob Jacobson. He's on that list. Who else is on that list? It's Ula Taylor from African Studies. If you think of Patrick, anyways, it's a long list of faculty. And we are excited to be delivering this class. And the question is, if phase 1 is show us that you are delivering that class and it's being demanded. So remember the thought experiment I started with was this idea that if somebody said you've got 30 hours to deliver to everyone, what would you deliver? Nobody offered 30 hours to deliver to everyone. This needs to be demand driven. You don't get to teach 1,000 people coming into Berkeley unless it's being demanded. And this was a pure demand driven thing that is adding up to 400 or 500 people this summer. It needs to be demand driven to add up to 1,000 next summer, and that's really what we're shooting at. But I'm gonna paint the biggest picture now, and then I'm gonna move into some Q&A because we're getting close to the halfway point. But if somebody stopped me and said, "All right, Rich, suppose you're talking to a donor. Suppose you're talking to somebody that could make a 9-figure gift to Berkeley. 9 figures. What is that? That's $100 million. Sometimes I like to say, there are people out there that have signed the giving pledge, and they're going to give away most of their wealth in their lifetime. And many of these people have $4 billion, $5 billion, $10 billion to give away in their lifetime. They've already signed a pledge to do that. If you have $4 billion to give away in your lifetime, you need to give away $100 million gifts. We can help these people. We can help these people. And imagine a $100 million gift, but you don't get a $100 million gift unless you have a $100 million idea. It's like all you've talked about is a class and some identity making. So hit us with the big picture. All right, here's the big picture. I would start this way. If I were speaking to a donor with that kind of capacity, I would say, we've all seen the big gold C up on the hill. We've all seen the big C on the hill. We're going to create a C school. We're going to create a change school. It's going to oversee this curriculum, not just this front-end course, but what we call connector courses. There's going to be follow-on courses. There's going to be a course like becoming a changemaker in education, or becoming a changemaker in the sciences, or becoming, a changemaker in the arts. There's going to be connector experiences. What does it mean to get your hands dirty in this Berkeley Changemaker curriculum? What about alumni that want to come back and sample this Changemaker curriculum? So what's in the curriculum? Some of the things that people have already mentioned in the chat. I'll start with collaboration. I'm going to mention 3 C's, but I'll start with collaboration. So here's one. When you're 18, when I'm 18, I'll speak for myself. When I'm 18, I was Berkeley as an undergrad. You're 18. You're arriving at Berkeley. There aren't too many 18-year-olds that think about the world in any way other than, I'm going to make my biggest impact in this world as an individual contributor. That's just the way 18-year-olds think. when we get older, we start to realize that our life's biggest impact is going to get realized by working through and with other people. That is a fundamental psychological transformation from individual contributor to through and with other people. It's really fundamental. So you could say, oh, collaboration, yeah, what next, right? Sort of like, no. Students, there are skill sets for working on teams. Where does team success come from? Where does this idea that we can get a lot done together, but we need to actually work together? We are not just the sum of our individual productivities. What does a winning team look like? How does an 18-year-old start to think about that? Most of us really didn't get into that until we got well into our working careers. We're not going to deliver all of that in one 30-hour class on the front end of a curriculum, but we're going to get students thinking this way. Here's another one. I mentioned collaboration. Communication. People will often say, you know, too many of our students will graduate really not being able to stand up in front of a group of people and influence them, motivate them, get them to work together, right? So how do you think about that kind of communication skills? And that can be delivered. We can teach that. It's not just about business school skills, but that's the kind of thing that gets taught in every business school. We often talk about leadership communications and so forth, but this is something that, you know, how do we deliver ideas in front of people orally and make them convincing? Maybe we want to be a scientist. How do you give a great seminar as a scientist? That kind of thing. Collaboration, communication. The third one is, in many ways, the most fundamental. It is critical thinking. Critical thinking. So think, for example, problem framing. I remember some of the most influential people in my life have said to me, you know, spend some time writing down a problem statement. Oh, we hear this phrase, oh, what problem are we trying to solve? But it's, no, really, not symptoms, causes. What's the deep issue here? Can you articulate it in 2 or 3 sentences? Because if you can't, you haven't thought deeply enough about it. And a lot of the people I respect most in life are people that are sort of like people who understand the problem that needs to be solved deeply and can frame and reframe problems and opportunities. Some of that is design thinking. Some of it is good old-fashioned critical thinking. One of the things that I've learned is Lisa Wymore is one of the many faculty, theater, dance, and performance studies. She's also contributing to this class. I was talking to Lisa and she was saying, you know, I'm a social scientist, so I didn't naturally think about it this way, but she was saying empathy is fundamental to critical thinking. If you want to look at an issue from all angles, you have to understand where those angles are coming from. How are different people thinking about this issue? You can't do critical thinking well without empathy. Now, for an economist, that's actually not a natural notion. But for a humanist, it's a very natural notion. Anyways, so critical thinking, collaboration, communication, those are some of the components of this. And when we think about a C school that's overseeing this curriculum, that's overseeing professional education, executive education, the convening power of Berkeley, pulling Changemakers, Berkeley Changemakers back to Berkeley to develop this theme. And so what might this look like 5 years from now? Describe for me what success might look like. Imagine 5 years from now. We're talking, my daughter's 17. My daughter's at Berkeley High School. So imagine a 17-year-old in Stockton, California, or San Diego, or St. Louis, or Sao Paulo. And imagine that 17-year-old saying, I've got to go to Berkeley. That narrative, that Berkeley Changemaker narrative, hits me right here. Right here. That's where I want to be. I'm not seeing anything that clear from any of the other top universities. I'm going to Berkeley. So it could be a talent magnet for young people. Among other things, I think a lot of faculty are actually drawn to this. I won't mention any names because it would be unfair, but some of my most senior colleagues in the humanities, not just me, there are a lot of people working on this. And Alex Budek had the first class. When I and others started talking to some of our humanities colleagues, it's sort of like, when do we start? Right? I think for a lot of the humanities fields, the notion is, gosh, capital campaign, everybody's talking about the STEM fields. It's like, where are the humanities? Demand for some of the majors in the humanities has been down the last 10 years. Berkeley Changemaker is something that's fully inclusive of the humanities, as well as the STEM fields and the social sciences, obviously. So that's a very, very quick overview. Here's is it possible for a high school senior, one of the questions in the chat, for a high school senior that really wants to go to Berkeley to take this class? I love this question. I think the quick answer is this summer, no. This summer, it's being designed for matriculated students and incoming freshmen. As I mentioned, it'll be 400 to 500, so it'll be with breakouts and pods, and it won't just be, asynchronous 400-person listening rooms. But we don't have that yet. But I do see this as something over the next year or two as developing, right? Alumni want this content. How do I get a piece of this content, right? Our staff want this content. How do I deliver it to the staff? We, the institution. And for people who are sampling Berkeley and saying, hey, I'm coming to Berkeley, I'm 17, I'm 18, I haven't decided yet, I want to sit in on a class. This might be the kind of class that could animate students. I was reading from that teaching evaluation. This is the kind of class that many students will say, that unlocked me. And when I mean unlocked, let me use an expression that is one of my favorites as an educator, my whole life, effectively. We've all heard the phrase, you can't be what you can't see. I know that was true for me. Neither of my parents had a 4-year degree. When I went to Berkeley, I don't think I knew anybody with a PhD. And a year after Berkeley, I'm in a PhD program in economics. That was not a path I could see. Somebody needed to show me that path. And faculty at Berkeley were the ones who showed me that path. You can't be what you can't see. So part of what this curriculum, I use the word agency. That word works for me. It doesn't work for everybody, but a sense of agency in life. That my life is going to have meaning and impact. And so one of the things that I mentioned, this fundamental transformation from individual contributor as a mindset to through and with other people, getting things done through and with other people. That takes time. That doesn't happen at 12, 13, 15. Here's another. From they do that to I do that. Part of this expression, you can't be what you can't see, is that you just can't envision yourself in these pathways, in these jobs, in these, other people do that. And all of a sudden, wait a minute, I do that. So I think this curriculum is successful when we have a lot of from they do that to I do that transformations in people's thinking. And that doesn't just mean entrepreneurship or commercial or private sector, right? That can mean I want to set up an NGO, or I want to write a book, or I want to be a scientist, or I want to be a politician, whatever it is. But we want that, wait a minute, this is available to me. So that's some of what we're looking at. And so I appreciate that question about the senior, and I think I like the idea that if, one way we can think about this is how do we deliver a stronger curriculum to Berkeley students? But I think what we're talking about here, if it plays out in its fullest degree, is it's going to change the mix of people who choose to come to Berkeley. This young people that are hungry for agency in their lives, it's like, bring them on. Now, sensible people can disagree. Some people might say, no, I think this is going to lean us into a mix of students that goes in a direction we don't want to go. We could disagree about that. I think it is a very strong direction, but I think we have to understand that if we're going to prosecute this narrative, if we're really going to go for it, that it will in fact change the mix of students that start saying, yeah, it's hitting me right here, I've got to be at Berkeley. And I think the more people that we're able to attract in that way, where it's like there really wasn't any other choice, not at the end of the day, not just got me in the heart. So that's part of what we're shooting at. So, my daughter is at Berkeley. She's a sophomore. She wants to know if the class addresses any graduation requirements. This is such an important question. And only a current student could get this question exactly right. So part of what we are trying to figure out is how do we make it fulfill graduation requirements, right? Students, they have their hands full. It's sort of like, oh yeah, it's a fun class. Why don't you take a bunch of fun classes? Or even, that's a valuable class. Take a valuable class. Because for most students, it's sort of like, look, I got to stay on track. If I want to get done in 4 years, I've got to stay on track. Something that's fun but doesn't track me toward graduation, other than units, is not as valuable. So we are, right now, it doesn't fulfill any graduation requirements. It gives you the units, and there is a unit graduation requirement. But when you start thinking about some of the data literacy requirements, or different majors have different requirements. But we are looking to see if we can fulfill letters and science specific graduation requirements with this class. And we want to try and design it over time. Now, maybe it won't be the front end class that fulfills that requirement, but remember I mentioned the connector courses. There's a series of 10 or 15 courses that would be across the whole university, becoming a changemaker in education, for example. And that some of those connector courses may very well be specific to graduation requirements in different majors. So that's work that's yet to be done. I'm sharing with you, obviously, a very early stage vision, but we will talk about it more, and we want to focus on that question because it's a super one. Thank you. One of the chats writes, "Philosophy and values, please, current student." And so I'm not quite sure. Values is something that will be addressed in a very fundamental way here in this course, and effectively philosophy as well. I mean, the word philosophy is understood differently, and of course we have a remarkable department of philosophy at Berkeley. Let me say a couple words on this specific comment that's in the chat. Here's maybe puzzling, but another of these thought experiments. If you asked, without warning them, if you could ask presidents of universities around, we'll just say around the US, this question: are you in the values business? You would get a pause from most universities. At Notre Dame, you'd get a quick answer, and at Jesuit universities, you'd get a quick answer, but most universities, you'd get a pause. If you instead asked, are you, your institution, are you in the character business? Boom, you'd get a very quick answer. Absolutely. So there's space between those two questions. Are you in the character business? Or are you in the values business? Now, there's another area where people can disagree, but I think what separates Berkeley most deeply, what is generative of meaning in this institution we call Berkeley most deeply, is, in my view, values. It is that Berkeley stands for things that are different than most all of those other absolutely outstanding research institutions. That's in part because it's public. And that's so Berkeley's been a social mobility engine. It's been dedicated to that. It runs at a scale. Some people are saying, why is it that presidents of great private universities, with all the resources they have, land, labor, and capital, to use the economics jargon, why do they run at scales that are 1/5 the size at the undergraduate program level of Berkeley? Wouldn't they serve society more if they ran at twice the current scale there, or 3 times? So, Berkeley has been a social mobility engine at so many levels, whether it's the percentage of Pell eligible students and so forth. Anyways, coming back to this idea of values, it's, I think, the most deeply determining elements of an institution are its values, and values that Berkeley has always stood for. Values I've already talked about. Questioning the status quo, not something every institution is going to be able to say or would want to say. Beyond yourself. I mean, seriously, I won't mention any names, but if a private university that is among the great research universities on the planet came out and said, we are about beyond yourself, would they do that? So, I mean, it's one thing to say, oh, here's an unobjectionable value. I won't mention any because I don't want to do it, but there are a lot of wonderful unobjectionable values that everybody uses. And if you're trying to say we're all about these values, it's like you and everybody else. But values like beyond yourself, question the status quo, etc., they're really separating. So anyways, that's going to have a lot, there's going to be a lot in this course that gets into what makes Berkeley Berkeley. I mean, if we're going to put the word Berkeley in front of the word Changemaker and we're going to trademark it, it's sort of like, so why is this a special thing? And the first answer is, in my mind, got to be values. And it can be history and lots of other things, but it's values is the anchor. How will the course utilize community partners in Silicon Valley? Love that question. I think a lot, and so there's the front end course, that's this digital course, and we've used, Oliver O'Reilly. He's the chair of the academic senate. He's one of the people who's delivered into this course. We've got just so many great teachers that are professors that are part of this. So this first course was basically getting footage of Janet Yellen asking kind of, when did the Changemaker transformation happen in your life? And Carol Christ and many of the other faculty members I've already mentioned on this call. The alumni, I think, and Silicon Valley partners in general, I think when you think about the whole curriculum, so now the connector courses, the connector experiences, right? How they get their hands dirty and so forth. That's where I think we can bring in alumni most effectively. The C-School, the Change School. What does that look like, and how do we develop that? I think that interface with the external community in a C school could be quite substantial. I'll just stimulate your imagination one more time here, or with one more example. So in my new role as Chief Innovation and Entrepreneurship Officer for the campus, one of the things that reports into me is Skydeck. If you haven't heard of Skydeck, you should learn about it. Skydeck is the campus-wide accelerator. So accelerator meaning you bring in these brand new startup teams, most all of them from Berkeley, though not every one of them, and accelerate them, get them closer to growing up, to becoming important. They have a set of advisors, and these advisors are dedicated to Skydeck. They are the principal advisor on several teams. They do workshops. It's like a job description. It's not like, oh, put my name on the list, I'll advise. No. It's sort of like if you're an advisor at Skydeck, it's like you got like a job description. And the reason I'm mentioning this is, what if our classes had advisors? What if in this Zoom-mediated world, so I teach international finance. Historically, that's what I taught. Kathy Leschuk, right, longtime CFO at Hewlett-Packard. She's on the Haas board. She's a Haas alum. Somebody like Kathy, if we said, would you, in my MBA or undergrad, it happened to have been MBA the last time I taught it, would you be an advisor to 4 of my MBA students in the class? Could you give them 2 half-hour segments where they just pepper you with questions? Yeah, I'd be happy to. That's using me in a totally spiky way. I haven't asked Kathy this question, but I use it as an example. What if we dialed alumni participation into our classes in much more methodical ways and use Zoom and other digital ways to do that? So anyways, I love this question. How will we utilize community partners? I think there are an awful lot of ways that we're going to be able to do that. And I think this COVID Zoom, not just Zoom, but so many ways of delivering digital content that have developed are going to accelerate our ability to bring engage alumni in the curriculum proper. So that's actually, I think, a really, really big opportunity. So I appreciate that question too. Other questions? There are a few more things that I'd like to talk a little bit about. So here's one. Some of you. So one of the readings in the class will be Steve Blank. Steve Blank's written about lean startups. So this is not an entrepreneurship class. But if we said, would it be a good thing if all of our undergraduates were just a little bit more entrepreneurial? The word entrepreneurship, for some people, is kind of a loaded word, right? They have a particular mental model, and it's sort of like disrupt something. It's sort of like, wait a minute. That word entrepreneurship doesn't work for everybody. But if we thought about what it means to be entrepreneurial, I think that's closely associated in my mind with the sense of agency, right? It's sort of living with agency. And so having an 18, 19-year-old reading Steve Blank talking about, what does the scientific method as applied to startups look like? What are the hypotheses, the questions that you need to test? What are the 5 most important questions you need to get an answer to before you can figure out whether you've really got a business idea here or not? Or if you're not interested in business at all, before you realize you've got an NGO idea here or not, right? So it's really a methodology for testing ideas. And in that article, I'm just picking one article out of many that are in this class, but the idea being that get out of the building is one of the messages of that article. Don't spend 6 months in your office writing a business plan and then show it to somebody. Most business ideas don't survive the first conversation with a potential customer. Get out of the building. Do 10 interviews with potential customers. Then change your idea. Then do 10 more. Then start to think about possibly designing a business. That's not something an 18 or a 19-year-old knows anything about. And they're not going to come out of this class having read one article and say, I totally get it. But it will put this notion of what does being more entrepreneurial look like? And this could also be a person that says, I don't want anything to do with the private sector, but I do want my life to have impact. And this set of skills is going to be valuable for me too. That's a win. That's a win too. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. So I'm sign me up as an alum. Great. I think the sooner we can get content to the alums, the better. Laura Hassner, who's on this call, she and I are working, on making sure that, this content gets widely delivered. One of the things that did happen is that, the content that got developed for this summer course, and again, the demand is there. It's going to be 400 plus, the very first offering, which we're very happy about, obviously. But then, some of the people on campus said, well, can we offer this to the general public over the summer? It's like, no, we're trying to build something here, right? We're trying to build an identity for Berkeley. We're not just trying to disseminate it widely. So we still have some narrative building to do, right? And but that doesn't mean we can't get this content pretty darn quickly to alums and pretty darn quickly to staff and so forth. And we're already starting to figure out ways to do that. So I appreciate that. I graduated from the College of Environmental Design. I think it would make a huge difference in the students' desires to become those changemakers, give back globally and locally. Thank you for this talk, Sarah and Ian. Thank you, Sarah and Ian, for that. I think, one of the things that heartens me is this idea that this narrative feels authentic across the university. I think there are people in education that are saying, Glinda Hall, she's one of the faculty she's just a remarkable faculty member in education. And but this idea that to people who are in the field of education, it's like, this feels real. And then people like Bob Jacobson, physicist, it's like, this feels real in science, And so I think part of it is whether you're in environmental design, you're an architect, you're a creative, you're a scientist, you're a business person, engineer, whatever. I think people are sort of saying, yeah, this is a modus operandi that is quite generalizable. If it weren't, it wouldn't be the unifier. Remember the 3 goals, right? It's like, can we do some identity making? Can we do some unifying? And can we do, a people vision? And I think if it really needs to feel authentic for every part of the campus, if it's going to really take off. We still have a lot of execution to do, but the fact that we've built built a class for this summer and that the demand is strong. Look, people are saying, show me more. Okay, so Alex developed a great class for 50 people. You've got this class, but you haven't delivered it yet over the summer. People are signing up, but it's sort of like, oh, I think I'll wait. I'll wait and see the data. Sort of like, that's fine. That's good. But the question is, and part of my job and the team that I'm working with, Laura and others, is sort of like, paint the picture. Paint the picture. I want you to be able to see this. I want you to be able to think, maybe. And as long as you're thinking maybe, then I think you're going to be on this team, because the momentum is growing and it feels like it really could sharpen things up nicely for Berkeley. Again, Berkeley's reputation is so strong. It's so powerful. Some people might think, come on, there isn't a lot of identity-making headroom out there. But, remember that thought experiment I mentioned, the 17-year-old in Sao Paulo or Stockton or wherever, saying, I need to go to Berkeley. Are we winning that student? Are we hearing that? I'm sure we're hearing it sometimes, but we could be hearing that pervasively. And I think if we really develop this in an authentic, committed way, I think it would be unique in higher education. What great research university has a narrative that would compare? Anyways, that's the picture that we're trying to paint. So Laura just put something in the chat. We welcome your ideas. Laura Hassner, the woman I'm working closely with on this. Changemaker at berkeley.edu. So if you have any questions about, how do we get access to this? What's going to happen next? When, what's the first connector course you're going to roll out? We're just starting to do some of that kind of stuff. What needs to happen before there's a C school? A really big gift needs to happen before there's a C school, right? It's not like the chancellor saying, hey, Rich, how many millions do you need to build a C school? That's not the way it's working, okay? So the idea is, look, as people have told me, not me, Berkeley. Berkeley doesn't get $100 million gifts unless it has $100 million ideas, right? So it's like paint the big picture so people can look at that and say, now imagine a donor that could write a 9-figure check, $100 million. What do they want to see? They don't just want to transform Berkeley. They want to see Berkeley do something that's going to transform higher education, that's going to get everybody's attention, that's going to change curricula elsewhere and at Berkeley. That's what they're going to want to see. So if this is powerful enough, think about it as not just changing curriculum at Berkeley, and not just changing the mix of students who come to Berkeley, but also changing higher education in various ways externally as well. So I think that's part of the aspiration, again, if we can do it well. Now, I think we've got a posting of the syllabus. So the syllabus for the course, I think, is in the chat now. It will go back. I think it was in the chat a little bit earlier. So look at the syllabus, right? Look at that list of faculty. Look at you say, no, I want to see what the 20 sessions look like. It's all there. The reading list. What's on the reading list? It's all there. All the readings aren't posted because of copyright rules, but you'll be able to see the whole syllabus. And if there are chunks of it, like for example, you might say, hey, this is in my area. This is what I do. I would like to help you build out this chunk in this curriculum, not just for this front-end course, but also for the connector courses. We would love to hear from you, because I think this is an area where people can say, hey, I can help somehow. Again, if it's a powerful and motivating enough narrative, then I think a lot of people could start to say, yeah, let's row together and see how far we could take this. So you can tell I'm kind of excited about it, and the students seem to be excited about it, and so do the faculty. I think if the faculty weren't excited about it, we'd be in trouble. Okay, that's just the way Berkeley works, and I think that's the way it, in some ways, should work, because the faculty really are so fundamental So many faculty, I won't mention names, again, I don't want to call them out, but so many faculty who are just busier than all get out. They're asked to do everything. And you show them a 2-pager on this Changemaker narrative and they say, whoa, how can I help? I think people are that fired up. We got a lot of execution to do yet, but that's what we're after here. Okay, so the partnership with California Alumni Association, we just have a couple of minutes left here. But we do have a terrific part. So Chloe Hewlett, we just did an interview for CAA, and we've had a lot going on with the Alumni Association more generally. In fact, I think part of how I got connected to Mike and others was that we made a brief presentation to the California Alumni Association board meeting. Laura and I did. So we're currently welcoming CAA scholars, right? There's so many scholarships that get run through California Alumni Association. We're making sure that there is a spot in this class, even if it sells out, for all of these California Alumni Association scholars that some of the people on this call have helped to fund. So thank you for that. We want this to be just as embracing a program as possible. So anyways, the connective tissue with the Alumni Association has already started to get built. We're building out connective tissue with athletics. We're building out connective tissue with Stiles Hall to make sure that everybody on campus feels welcome in this program. Not everybody feels as welcome in the entrepreneurship ecosystem as traditionally defined, and we want to make sure that everybody feels welcome in this Berkeley Changemaker narrative. That's fundamental to what we're doing. So that's essentially what I had. I hope we'll hear from you from that and that email. Send us an email. We'd love to sort of we'd love you to join the movement. Okay. Okay, that's going too far. We would love to have you be as involved as you'd like to be, and we're happy to keep you as informed, as you'd like to be with syllabi for connector courses and lots of things like that down the road. Okay, so I'll turn it back to you, Mike. Thanks again.
Well, thank you, Rich. That was very informative, and I'm sure that people will be connecting with you. I also want to thank you for your support of the Lair over the years. And also mention that Laura has been a Lair camper. So the Lair, the Alumni Association, Berkeley, we're all very connected. And again, thank you for the work you're doing. And we look forward to having you back up here in the mountains in 2021. And again, anybody has any questions, please email Rich and Laura directly. And thanks everybody for joining us, and have a great night.
Thanks all.
Go Bears.
Go Bears.